Hello everyone, my name is Mr. Bold. I'm a documentary specialist, and in September of 2010, I had the rare privilege of meeting with 5 brother rats from the class of 1980 at the Virginia Military Institute. These 5 brother rats had gotten together after almost 30 years and relived their experience, calling it the assault on the Citadel. I met these 5 brother rats at an undisclosed beachfront location near Long Island Sound in Connecticut. They invited me over to document their retelling of their story. Their mission back in the fall of 1979 was to travel from Lexington, Virginia, at the Virginia Military Institute, down to the other military college in the South, which is the Citadel, located in Charleston, South Carolina. They were going to attempt to kidnap the Bulldog, which is the Citadel mascot, prior to the annual, at that time, VMI Citadel football game. These 5 cadets were able to accomplish their mission and this extraordinary feat without incurring any disciplinary action from the Virginia Military Institute. This was quite an accomplishment in the fall of 1979. This is their story. The assault on the Citadel, fall 1979. On Saturday, cadets and parents will watch as the Big Red Team rolls over the Citadel Bulldogs and wins the Military Classic of the South and recaptures the Silver Shako Award. This will be the second beating that the Citadel has taken in a week's time. For last weekend, a group of 5 cadets dealt a severe blow to the Citadel's pride as well as to the appearance of their college. Cadets Tom Gunny Kelly, Bruno Lofsted, Dan Kahn, Jack Keene, and Rick Space Shot Fowler began planning for the operation for over a week prior to their assault, as various logistical problems presented themselves, mainly financial and time management. The original objective of the operation was to snatch the Citadel mascot, a bulldog. Hence, the operation was nicknamed Operation Pup Snatch. However, this objective was pretty much discarded when it was found that no one knew where the dog was kept. It was then decided that there would be a new objective: kidnap a cadet. After much discussion, the 3rd Battalion Commander, Cadet Schmuckatelli, became the intended victim. This selection was primarily due to the fact that 2 of the members of the group, Kelly and Kahn, knew Schmuckatelli from Marine summer camp. A picture of the victim was circulated throughout the group so that each member of the group would recognize Cadet Schmuckatelli. Saturday, following SNI, which for you civilians is Saturday Noon Inspection back then at VMI, the conspirators left the Institute for their destination. After a stop in Greensboro, North Carolina to pick up Kahn, who had run in a road race that morning, the 5 arrived in Charleston shortly after midnight. Almost immediately, they headed to the Citadel for some night reconnaissance. What they saw nearly froze them in their tracks, for compared to VMI, the Citadel truly is a citadel, with gates, fences, and guards all around the post. However, they managed to pull themselves together, found a side gate which was under repair, and slipped on post to recon the area. The next day, Sunday, was also spent in casing the joint, with members of the group walking all over the post, posing as tourists. Various bits of information was extracted from children of faculty and from cadets. In one case, Kelly actually walked behind a knob, their equivalent to a rat, which are freshmen at both colleges, and strained him, which means rack your chin in, all of which the kid answered promptly, leaving happily when told to drive on. The actual snatch was made around 2200 Sunday night as Gunny Kelly lured Schmuckatelli out to the van, telling him that he was visiting his brother in 1st Battalion. Schmuckatelli offered to go over to the barracks with him and voluntarily got in the van, much to the astonishment of the other team members who had been prepared to force him in. It was not until he was driven off post that Schmuckatelli realized what was happening, at which point he attacked the driver. After being restrained by the other 4, he was reduced to howling, yelling, and complaining that he had test. After about an hour of this, the hearts of the raiders melted, or to be more precise, they were sick and tired of hearing the moaning and wailing, and dumped Schmuckatelli back at the gates. Now that their kidnapping plan was shot, the alternative plan had to be invoked. At about 0400 Monday, the intrepid quintet mounted an assault upon the sleeping Citadel. Silently making their way past groggy guards and unsuspecting campus police, the five wreaked havoc on the post. An old Marine LVT, which is landing vehicle tracked, parked on their parade ground, now sported a red and yellow VMI paint job, as does a rappelling wall and the road in front of their mess hall. VMI monograms now adorn the sides of the statue of the Bulldog, as well as on glass windows in many of their academic buildings and their student center. To add insult to injury, fireworks and rockets were fired into their barracks, dragging the Citadelians out of their slumber just in time to hear a taunting VMI 80 go driving away. According to sources at the Citadel, the raid was a success, as the Bulldogs now know they were beaten. Retaliations have been promised, however, the men of the eye will be waiting. This is Mr. Bold, documentary specialist. This documentary is being filmed in an undisclosed location. Gentlemen, taking you back to October 1979, your first class year at the Virginia Military Institute. I have, over the years, heard of the legend of Operation Pup Snatch. For the record, participants of Operation Pup Snatch are Brother Rats from left to right, Jack Keane, Alpha Company, Navy, Rick Fowler, Alpha Company, Navy, Dan Kahn, Alpha Company, United States Marine Corps, Tom Gunny Kelly, 2nd Battalion S3, United States Marine Corps, Arthur B. Bruno Lofstead, United States Army. Jack Keane, I want to take you back to October 1979 and the birth of Operation Pup Snatch. Jack.
Well, as you know, most of us were PX cowboys at the time, and we spent a lot of time in the exchange drinking a lot of Red's coffee. And I would say we were probably eyeing some of the women who had worked there at the exchange. And one day we realized that we were eyeing them a little bit too long, and we needed a road trip. And we put the idea of going down to the Citadel and reliving the experiences of some of our dykes from the class of '77 when they used to go and kidnap cadets from Virginia Tech. And we decided to go down to the Citadel and kidnap one of their Bulldogs and bring it back to the eye and release it at halftime the following week at the Citadel VMI football game.
Military classic of the South.
Silver Shako.
So at the school, an idea just came to mind that this was going to be done.
Yeah, pretty much. We were all sitting around having coffee, and we were pretty bored, and we had, at the time, Rick Fowler wasn't on confinement, so he had a free weekend, so we were able to get away and head on down to Charleston and spend the weekend down there.
So the idea...
I actually missed that kind of opportunity, since that was about the only weekend.
It was a rarity.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It was a rarity.
So from that point, the birth of Operation Pup Snatch, I would assume that you had to move into the planning stage. So my understanding is that you have, out of the five of you, the best concept, remembrance of what occurred during that time. So your next step, I would assume, is planning. Is that correct?
Right. We decided that we needed to get some data, and we did this back in 1979 when we didn't have the internet. So we did a lot of interlibrary loan of yearbooks from the Citadel, and got a lot of charts, got a lot of pictures of Bulldogs, got a lot of maps of Charleston, terrain maps of the Citadel complex. So we knew where all the academic buildings were, we knew where all the monuments were, we knew exactly where all the training facilities were for their PT, knew where the yacht club was, the whole thing. So we started doing that and started meeting clandestinely, probably once or twice a week. And then as we got closer to the op, met probably once a day over in Bruno's room.
So to your left now are the other members of Team Pup Snatch. Can you take me through, or take our viewers through, the recruitment process of the individuals to your left? Each individual, why that individual was chosen, what did he bring to the operation, if anything?
That's easy.
For me especially. Blackmail. Blackmail for the most part.
Dan had dirt on Gunny, and so that worked. But Rick was there because he had a van, and we knew we were going to need a getaway car. And Bruno also had a car, but we would have ended up stuffing a dog in the trunk for a 12-hour drive back. which probably would not have been nice for Bruno's car.
Would have made the handover easy, though.
It would have made the handover
So.
very easy. I just would not have been wanted to be the one who opened up that trunk after a 12-hour drive with a dog.
Well, we thought about putting the dog in the back seat, and then Dan could be in the
And
trunk.
Dan in the trunk.
Now, Rick, when you were approached at whatever point in that October of '79 timeframe, what did you think when you were approached by Jack about being a member or a participant in this operation?
I got to stay clean for 2 weeks, is what you were saying.
I can't get any demerits. I can't get on confinement.
It's quite
And-
a
and for-
sacrifice, which required its
For
own
me,
set of
it
plans.
wasn't so much that I was doing bad things. I was just incredibly lazy, a facet of my personality that really hasn't changed all that much. And so I was late for everything, and so I got confinement. But for this, this was fun. This was something that we could all get excited about, going down and doing something that nobody thought that was a doable task. The Citadel was just so far away that who's going to do a kidnapping long distance like that?
So Dan is our next. Thank you, Rick. Dan is our next member of the team. To your left, Jack. Dan's recruitment and what did he bring to the table?
Well, Dan was there based upon his experiences in Marine summer camp and his ability to help plan an operation like this. This was you take a look, this was a joint op. Not only was it joint across barracks, but it was joint across services, and this is all before, you know, we in the services had joint operations thrust upon us in the late 80s.
Dan, what do you remember about that recruitment period there in October '79 when you were approached by Jack?
Yeah, well, the big thing was the boldness and daring of the opportunity, and then Gunny and I, having been to officer candidate school with a number of Citadel cadets, provided us an opportunity to add to the effort by being able to run some interference should those cadets or any cadets show up. We could just say we're down visiting our friends from the summer. You know, it gave us a plausible cover should we have any difficulty on post there. So, and as it turned out, it greatly aided in bringing one of the miscreants into the van, which we'll discuss later.
Okay, Jack.
Yes, I seem to recall that you didn't have a girlfriend at that time, and that dog was looking pretty good, actually, right? So, I mean, you know, so I'm pretty sure that it was a social thing too, right? So,
It was one of the more attractive dates we'd seen him with in quite a while.
Jack, the next member to your left is Tom Gunny Kelly. What was Gunny's contribution to the team? Why was he recruited?
Best looking guy on the team.
The good looks thing.
Yeah, that's right, the good looks. Actually, Tom was brought aboard for all the reasons that Dan had suggested, but there was some doubt about Gunny's ability to perform, not so much with the team members, but more of his roommates. They didn't think that he had it in him. In fact, about 2 nights before we undertook this op, Gunny's roommates, Cowboy Smith, Elliot Wolf, Ken Ulrich, and Eli Alford came over to my room, which was about, what, 4 doors down the stoop from yours?
Right.
And they came in and they just sat me down and they said, look, Jack, we're a little nervous. You know, we know you, we've known you for years. We know you're taking Rick because, well, because Rick's got a van. You know, we see Dan every now and then, and, you know, Dan seems pretty sane, but Lofstead is just a psycho. And we're worried about whether or not Gunny's going to be able to perform under those kinds of pressures, and we're worried that Gunny's not going to make it through this op. And you know, we need you to do your best and watch out for Gunny. And I distinctly remember just, you know, looking across the desk at him and looking him in the eye and saying, guys, give me your Gunny. I'll bring home a man.
Outstanding, outstanding. So after that point, was you had doubt? You had doubts, or the roommates had doubts?
We joked with Gunny. I mean, we all had doubts about Gunny. I mean, you know, Bruno and I specifically envisioned, you know, another May 15th big parade, you know, as we do for Newmarket. And we weren't really sure the odds were in our favor of pulling this one off. We thought we were going to do some jail time on this, and so we figured, you know, every year on 13 October they'd have a parade for us, and you know, they'd say, Cadet Bruno Lofstead, captured on the field of honor, sir. Cadet Dan Kahn, captured on the field of honor, sir. Cadet Gunny Kelly, ran away from the field of honor, sir.
That's some high charges there, Jack. Gunny, I know you've been sitting there professionally listening to this diatribe about your recruitment, the doubts that were being thought about your participation specifically in this operation.
Well,
what do you have to say about that, Gunny?
You know, it's been 31 years, and some of us, our recollection, like Jack's recollection, begins to become a little cloudy with the facts. I mean, sometimes it's not crystal clear what exactly happened, okay? But my recollection is, got done with the Officer Candidate School. We did rather well down there, Dan Kahn and myself. We felt we knew some of the folks down there at the Citadel. We felt we had a pretty good rapport with them. I do want to say as a disclosure statement that the word kidnapping just never crossed my mind. I have no idea why we brought ropes. I assume it was to, in case our vehicles got stuck in a ditch or something, we can haul our vehicles out. And I think Bruno brought his long knives, and I thought it was because we were going to go out and have steaks after maybe we went down there. But my recollection was it was a well-planned operation. We were going after a dog. You know, it started to morph after a while. I mean, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, as they say. This plan kind of morphed. We started off looking for a bulldog, then it turned into any small dog that drools, then it turned into a white cat. So it began to kind of unravel a little bit. We had to look for another opportunity, and the opportunity was a good friend from OCS. Now but again, the word kidnapping, I mean, I don't know where Jack got that from, because I just want to say for the record, my recollection of this, and I'm sure Dan would agree, I mean, kidnapping. Doing something illegal.
Brought up that term, actually.
Although, you know, it is kind of important
as a military
to notice
operation, this was a capture.
It was a capture.
Yes, yes.
It's a snatch.
Now, would you consider,
snatch.
in today's parlance, we're videotaping again for the record. This is the year 2010, and it is the fall of 2010. So, was the dog at that time, and/or your final subject or target, were they considered high value using today's parlance? Was it a high value target?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. The dog was a high value target. They brought
Mascot,
it to
that's,
their
you know,
mascot. It was
like the
it was
Navy
like capturing Mo.
goat and,
Okay.
and the Army mule, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, or Mo the kangaroo.
Or Mo, yep.
So the final member to be chatted about recruitment and his purpose on the team is Arthur B. Bruno Lofstead. Jack, talk to me about Bruno.
I think Gunny's roommates summed up the reason we brought Bruno. He was a psycho, and we knew that if anything happened, that we could unleash the dog of war, Bruno Lofstead. Gunny will tell you, Bruno came armed to the teeth. I mean, he had a knife taped to his chest as we were low crawling around the Citadel complex. He had a knife taped between his shoulder blades. I mean, it was. I was just glad that he was my wingman that night, because I knew if anything happened, I could just let Bruno loose.
Now, before I get to Bruno, for the record, your target geographically was the Citadel, the military college, or supposed military college of South Carolina. Is that not correct? So that
Correct.
for our audience that's listening or watching this documentary, the Citadel is a military college in Charleston, South
It's
Carolina.
an alleged.
That's
It's
their
an alleged
plan.
military college.
And somebody, I think the Gunny brought up that, or Dan brought up the distance. We're talking several hundred miles.
Talking 12 hours.
There you go, 12 hours driving
Crossing
time.
the state lines, which is why
Crossing
kidnapping was never part of it.
three state lines, but again, you know, it's an alleged military college, and it's also alleged to be accredited.
Roger that. Now, I digress there. Now I'm going to get to Bruno. Bruno, you appear to have been, in addition to the Marines, the heavy muscle brought on the team. What is your recollection of recruitment time and those early stages of the operation?
Well, before you get into that, let me just say that, you know, you called him the heavy muscle. That was 31 years ago. So as you're looking at Bruno now, just realize.
I'm heavier muscle now, but you know, actually, I think that's just not true. I mean, I really was brought along as the PAO. I said, we clearly saw that we were going to have to shape the story, and
IO, information.
So, that's right. I mean,
The PAO, personal
the action
assault
is really
officer.
only as good as the perception afterwards, and so I really was clearly under the understanding that that was my portion of the mission here.
So-
you know, and I really had very little to do with with the developing of a plan to kidnap anyone. I want to make that perfectly clear. As an information officer, I am detached.
Now, you threw out an acronym that some of our viewers that may see this on YouTube or view this documentary, PAO, your definition of the
Public
acronym.
Affairs Officer.
So can I take that to mean that you were brought there for diplomatic reasons?
I wanted to make sure that the press got the right story here. You know, it's important. With the military, you know, you got to make sure.
I'm not sure that quite explains the knives and the three sets of knives that we had.
I think that our
And the
purpose in
contour
bring-
maps.
I was carrying those for my brother. I said,
Yes, his infamous brother.
art.
Okay.
It takes a thief to catch a thief. We brought a dog to catch a dog.
so-
Anything else that you'd like to add, Bruno, about your early participation in recruitment?
No, like I said, I really want to get it clear for any legal authorities that, you know, really, I had nothing to do with carrying
Our faces
anybody.
are being blacked out, and these are fake names. Is that correct?
It will be what it will be. It is what it is.
I think it was actually, we had the really clear early on recognition that, you know, this was not long after Vietnam, and we clearly were influenced by the whole,
Spec
by
Ops.
the whole spectrum of warfare that we were going to miss, and one of them really was the perception game. So we were pretty confident up front that we were going to have to really get our story out, and so that's where I felt I was going to bring my expertise to bear.
Well, we also knew we
And
had
then-
to get in and out quick. Get in, snatch the target, and get out of there as quick as we could.
Okay, Jack, so now we have Team Pup Snatch put together. Was there any thought of expanding after the initial recruitment from what we have as the actual 5 members of the assault team?
No, we just didn't have enough room in the van.
Okay.
So we kept it as it was. Well, we did have some support, though. Tracy Wilson was support for Pup Snatch. He took care of Dan Kahn and ran a road race with Dan as we were driving on down. So Tracy was some support, but that was it. We pretty much knew we had the talent we needed at this point.
I'm going to take you again back to October 1979. Planning is complete. The mission go has been issued.
Right.
So Team Pup Snatch is a go. Talk to me about the initial step-off for Operation Pup Snatch, and then the rest of the team could chime in if you agree or disagree with Jack's recollections as to how the initial phase of the operation transpired.
Well, by the step-off, are you referring to, what we did when we first got to Charleston, or the final planning meeting in Bruno's room to say it's a go or a no-go?
Let's go to that point right there. Bruno, take me then in October '79, Bruno Lofsted's room, barracks.
Well, Bruno was a little late to the game because he had to get his roommates out of there because this was fairly limited distribution. We didn't want a lot of folks knowing
Need
what
to
was
know.
going on. It was need to know
Advance
only.
notice.
Didn't want any leaks.
We did not want any leaks, and we all know that Sean and Ed would have been the two to leak it.
Right, I mean, if Ed ever woke up during those meetings, it was going to be,
We would
could have been a serious leak there.
We would have been
so
hosed.
Entire
Uh,
East Coast
so-
would have been alert.
so-
So we got into Bruno's room, and we all filed into Bruno's room separately, staggered time, about 5 minutes each. And we all got there. We put a blanket over the door, and Bruno reached over, pulled the shade down, and there was our target. He said, "Gentlemen, this is our target." It was a picture of a bulldog on the back of the shade in the window. So we went through the entire logistics trail. Time we were going to depart right after Saturday noon inspection. How long it was going to take us to get down to Greensboro to pick Dan up after his road rage.
Either one.
Either one. And then how long it was going to take to get into Charleston, where we were going to stay in Charleston, because we did this all with our naval science and military science $100
This
a
was
month
not government
paychecks.
funded,
This was-
personally funded.
This was not government funded, and you couldn't call your parents up and say, "Hey, we need $1,000 to make a road trip down to Charleston to snatch a puppy and bring it back." So that wasn't going to happen. So we had to do this on the cheap. So we did the final meeting. I guess it was Friday night, day before we went. We decided it was a go. S&I ended, and we all boarded the van and got underway.
Now, let me interrupt. And again, I know you're talking and throwing out acronyms that you all know about. Our viewers may not. SNI is what?
Saturday noon inspection.
Thank you.
We all had to go through on Saturdays where they came through and did a formal inspection of your room.
And for all of you to be able to leave Lexington for the extended time period required for Operation Pup Snatch, it's my understanding that a permit had to be created and submitted. Can you talk to me about the permit, what a permit is generally, and then what?
Well, a permit allowed you to go away for a long weekend. And essentially, you had to be squeaky clean. You couldn't be on confinement. You couldn't have a certain number of demerits, which we did have a liberty risk with us, and that was Rick. If Rick was out, we weren't going. So we had to keep him clean for about
So it was a
2 week
miracle
period.
just the operation kicked off, is what we're saying.
Rick, what do you remember about that time? Now, you've disclosed, you've been very forthcoming about your issues there with the administration at VMI. A lot of demerits. You're a confinement king. That 2 week period, I think, is what was mentioned, that you had to stay clean. How was that for you personally at the Institute with your past troubles, the trail that you had of your past troubles there?
It was an effort. It definitely was an effort. People were helping me out, pushing me around, getting me to where I needed to be on time so that I would not be late. And the way the system works at VMI, if you're late, there is no grace period. You put yourself on report. And I was well familiar with that particular process.
So would the team agree that it was a, for the lack of a better term, a superhuman or super cadet effort for Mr. Fowler to make it through that 2 week period, staying clean?
I think it was a super cadet effort on Rick's roommates to make sure Rick was where he was when he was supposed to be there.
That's true. I cannot claim credit for being clean.
And we appreciate that, Rick. We appreciate your forthrightness.
And we couldn't tell his roommates what we were up to. We just said, we're going away for the weekend, Rick's got to be there, just do us this favor. Yeah, Rick's got to drive, just do us this favor.
Okay, so I am totally impressed. I have a slight military background. I'm impressed that as first class cadets, and you had been through some training through your ROTC plus the military training that you were given at VMI, that you were following prescribed military planning procedure and protocol in putting this operation together. Bruno with the target, pulling down the shades. This is right out of a movie that you would see on television. You guys could be movie stars just from what you've done right now and at your level, because right now, for the most part, you were all in your early 20s with no
We were the Bowery boys.
with no formal military training as either ensigns or second lieutenants. Is that not correct, Jack?
Correct.
Okay, so the meeting ends in Bruno's room. The mission is a go.
Missions a go.
So take me to the next step as you prepared to leave Lexington. Was there anything unusual that you or the team remembers about that small window leaving Lexington?
Yeah, I think we made it through a Saturday noon inspection without Rick Fowler getting put on report. It was, I think every one of us were sweating bullets at that point. We were just praying to God that, you know, we'd get through that inspection and Rick would meet us at with the van at Jackson Arch.
But you know, Jack, think back to that time after we actually drove away. I can recall you vividly kind of pressed against the window and kind of expressing the fears that all of us had, that we were going and we weren't coming back. I mean, somewhere deep in your gut you had that. I know you did.
Well, I did. I thought we had Gunny with us. We had a liability. And I was convinced that, you know, there was an opportunity for us to screw it up, and he was with us.
We're driving away from our loved ones. I mean, we had Wanda, Red Turner, you know. They're back there, and will we see them again?
All the cadet waiters.
I mean, I know I ate that
red
last
hot
bacon, egg, and
dogs.
cheese. I ate that last bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich, and I was thinking, I wonder if this is it for me, man.
So non-combat wise, you truly were, as cadets, going into harm's way at that point.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Gunny, I have to go to you. Again, another disparaging comment by the team leader about their faith in you and your possible performance or lack thereof in this operation. This is twice now that you have been singled out by the team leader as a possible liability. Your comments on that, Gunny?
Right, well, you know, anybody will look back in hindsight and be critical of things, but I just kind of realized, you know, I wanted to make sure its conditions were set for success. So in a lot of ways, the best of the team were built. You know, for each of us had our own attributes, and the attributes that I think we brought to the table was to form a good team, to get across the line, and we knew that somewhere the operation was going to have to change, and it did. It changed significantly. And fortunately, we made some good calls along the way. But I got a little doubtful myself, and particularly when we got down to a hotel, the hotel Motel 6, and you know, we were trying to, for accommodation reason and for saving costs, we decided we were going to bunk in one room, and that one room had 2 double beds in it, and
5
myself
guys.
and Dan Kahn went to bed right away. But I mean, I'm hearing stories about, and I just want to throw this out to Jack and Bruno, did they or did they not sleep in a bed together, and did they or did they not put quarters in the machine of their
Well,
bed?
Gunny, well, that's for another part of this documentary right now. Let me
Well,
just start.
I don't want to step too far ahead of this.
And I
Doubting
appreciate.
somebody,
I mean, we're going to an area now that we may have
I
to
don't wanna-
discuss and
I don't want to put
go
somebody
off
in
the record,
defense
if
here,
if I could, please.
But you know, you're
Can we
throwing it
just
back
listen to the
on me
interview,
and my
please?
doubts about myself, and it's like, I know we're in a don't ask, don't tell era here, but.
Gunny,
what I wanna
please.
mention-
I mean, that's for another part of the doc. Okay, I appreciate that,
I'm
Gunny.
sorry, Senator, I have absolutely no recollection of those events.
Now, just for the record, again, now we're starting the team, a little bit of crack there in the team. You two are still friends after 31 years, right? I mean, there's no
I don't know.
Who are you talking about, me and who?
Jack. You and Jack. I mean,
No, we're associates. I mean, we went to the same school together.
Okay.
That's what I recall. I mean, we graduated from the same institution, but friends, I mean, that's a little stretch.
all right. Well,
But what I will say about Jack is that,
So there's been that little Navy Marine Corps friction thing going on.
and it's just like at the end of the day, I mean, again, I mean, you know, I will say that, you know, all of us have a little cloudy judgment after 31 years. Yes, good.
very good,
I
Jack.
think my cloudiest judgment was probably bringing you on the team to begin with.
All right, gentlemen, that's for another. This documentary is for Operation Pup Snatch. Let's
We'll
not get into
those-
personalities
We'll
per
have to do
se.
those individual shots, you know, kind of like the reality shows off screen. We'll do the individual.
But for the
Rick,
for
you
the-
wanna
for
say
the team
something?
composition, we had a diverse makeup, different personalities, different skills,
So you can say that
And-
again.
and that helped us
3 times.
because we had to be flexible, and as it turns out, we had to be lucky too.
Just as in any military operation nowadays, you have departed your home base area,
Right.
and now you're en route, just like the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines of World War II. You're now en route on board ship. Yours just happened to be USS Fowler going down I-81, whatever your route was.
You went
Did-
down to 26.
Was there anything that happened en route that bears on the operation
we
that
just,
the viewers
we
might
just
like?
did
Point
verbal
at Phase
rehearsals.
Line Greensboro, and then
Yeah, we stopped, picked up Danny, and then...
Right, Dan was on a road race, or doing a road race, so that means that 4 of you departed VMI in the USS Fowler.
Didn't we make a logistics stop, right?
We did
I mean,
make a
just south
logistics
of the
stop.
border,
We,
right?
we
So
picked
that's-
we picked Dan up, and on the way down, we kept going through, you know, what each person's roles and responsibilities were, what we were going to do, how we were going to case the place, and walk through the entire time
You're
step
talking about
that
the
we had.
logistics stop at south of the border to
That's-
procure certain armaments that we didn't have.
Now,
with
Dan, let me stop you there. Now, I'm hearing the term south of the border. Now, don't tell me that Team Pup Snatch went to Mexico before heading over to the Citadel. Is that what you're talking about,
No,
south of the
no,
border?
No.
But there is Pedro always directs you to south of the border when you get into South Carolina.
Oh, so you're talking the south of the border in South Carolina. I was going to say, holy cow, how did you guys get to Mexico and then your aircraft involved? Okay, so now our viewers and myself, my mind is right, and I apologize for interrupting.
No
So
problem.
there's, where were we? Dan was commenting on logistics and south
It
of
was
the
a
border.
logistics stop in order to pick up certain explosive items.
Right, there were
that
some
we
things that were
needed
cached
for,
there that we really, you know, that,
we were going to use as a diversionary tactic. They came into other uses as well. But,
Right.
Now, can I ask the team, were you dealing in cash mostly to leave no
Oh, yeah,
paper
no
trail,
paper trail,
Cash
no
only.
credit card?
Cash only.
no receipts.
No receipts, no credit cards. No-
Okay, Jack, so you're en route. Again, you've passed south of the border, picked up whatever logistics, and heaven knows what I'm going to find out or uncover later on in this documentary. So you're moving on south, I would assume, as you move towards your geographic target of Citadel at Charleston, South Carolina. Take us to the next step, I would assume arrival in the area of operation.
Well, it was a rival down in Charleston, and it was after dark, so we just looked for. a
Still on
place to-
Saturday, is that correct?
Still on Saturday.
Okay.
So we're still looking for a place to hole up, and so we found the Motel 6. Obviously, we had certain requirements that had to be met.
The light was on.
The light was on. people were home, and the price was right.
Now, was this Motel 6 in the Charleston, South Carolina area?
North Charleston, out by the
Okay,
airport,
thank
the
you.
Air Force Base.
Please continue.
Just off of I-26, which was a straight shot into town to get to where we needed to go. So
With
we,
amenities, with amenities.
with amenities.
It was coin beds. Go ahead.
So we stopped off, and I believe we went into town that night and had a beer or two. And then hit the gut,
Probably too many. Go
probably
ahead.
too many, and then made our way back up to the hotel where we unpacked and got ourselves situated for the night.
Okay, so no recon on that first night
No,
arriving
it
in
was too dark,
Charleston.
and it
This
was
was Saturday. This was Saturday.
Right.
Okay, so you guys are in your hide site, bedded down for the night. Is there anything interesting that, again, now Gunny has brought up several minutes past in this documentary about something dealing with the Motel 6. I just want to caution you, Gunny, that this could be a family video, and I'm trying to keep
Well,
it
as Rick
as...
said, we're a diverse team. I mean, Dan and I are straight. I mean, we just want to go on record and say that. But it's a diverse team. So we'll let everybody speak for themselves, but as I recall, we made the best use of the facilities, but it got pretty noisy in there, to the extent that the neighbors complained. But I'll let Jack just speak for the record. I mean,
I do want to throw in there
Go ahead,
that
Rick.
when you mention bedded down, that's just a figure of speech.
That is correct.
There were 2 beds, 5 people. I lost. I slept on the floor.
Even though you were the van driver, and they wouldn't be there if it wasn't for you. It was a legitimate contest to see who was going to be...
True. But to be fair, at VMI, we often slept on the floor because our racks would be rolled up.
Okay.
And so throwing a blanket down and sleeping on top of that was not unusual.
well, there was a
Not
cockroach infestation in the room. So
All right,
Yeah, it
we'll
was
get,
a
Gunny, we'll get to
real
that
life.
again. I mean, you're just throwing out some wild stuff here.
Okay, well,
We're getting to
Once you go
Stephen
through the
King.
whole thing,
Stephen
Rick might have been
King.
doing it for self-preservation. We don't.
Rick may have been the luckiest of all of us, because I do seem to recall,
I did have more room.
Danny Kahn leaning over and yelling at Gunny, "Those aren't pillows."
No, you're confusing your own.
No, I do recall you saying, "Those aren't pillows."
And we'll get to that point.
Not that there's anything
I do have a question for Team Pup Snatch, though. At this point, were you all 5 together?
Yes,
How do you mean together?
in the same room.
There were 5 of you in the one
We
room.
were all 5 in the same room.
In close proximity.
Very.
A little bit wider than we are right now.
Just a little bit.
I won't even go as to how you guys were able to get
We're not supposed
5
to
of you
tell.
in one room at Motel 6. But
Bruno went in and registered for the room and convinced convinced folks that it was in their best interest to give one room to 5 guys.
okay, now we're at the evening of the first day of Operation Pup Snatch. We're in the hotel room, Motel 6. I have to go back to Gunny Kelly because of the aspersions or the innuendos that have been thrown out. What do you recall about the first evening of Operation Pup Snatch? Gunny Kelly, I want to take you to the room. Do we have a room number for the motel? Do you guys remember that by chance? You do not. It's 31 years ago. That's not important right now. What do you remember, Gunny Kelly, about that first night at Motel 6?
Well, I don't know because I wasn't up at the front desk, so I don't know what Bruno said, but it was a very kind of a romantic room. It had some reds in there and different colors on the bedspreads.
Those aren't pillows. Get your hands back to yourself, big guy.
There were some amenities in there. One of them was a coin machine that got the bed shaken. That wasn't the bed that I chose, but nor was it the machine that was turned on. But there later on in the night, when I was trying to sleep, I did hear a vibrating noise from the bed next to mine. And, I will let the folks that were in that bed kind of speak for themselves in their own defense.
All right, well, I see that team leader Jack Keane is anxious to address that. I have to call it an innuendo. There's no other word for it, Gunny. An innuendo. Jack,
tell all.
It was an all-tell story. Bruno and I ended up bunking together. Dan and Gunny ended up bunking together. Rick ended up bunking with probably about 5,000 of his finest friends, aka palmetto bugs. And we just bedded down, and Bruno looks over at me and says, "You got a quarter?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And he says, "Just give me the quarter." So I gave him the quarter. I heard this ka-chink, and he turned the knob, and all of a sudden the whole room started going nuts.
It's hammering the wall.
It was just slamming against the wall, the bed's pounding against the wall, and the whole room was shaking. Rick here just, it was the best thing for Rick because it got the palmetto bugs off of him because of the floor moving so
More
much.
vibration.
The poor folks in the room next to us, I just remember the guy pounding on the wall, yelling, "Hey, go easy on him over there!" And I just started yelling, "Hey, look, we're just friends. We're just friends." And it took a while for that thing to stop too.
There was no turning it off.
There was no turning it off.
Yeah.
You couldn't unplug it because it was
Well,
a
you know,
cable
it's
to
just
the
that
wall.
everybody was, tense.
Tense.
They were on edge. They had, it was a 12-hour drive.
Well, we thought it was
So
gonna be like
just kind of
Magic
loosen us
Fingers.
up a little bit, make sure we stayed loose, stayed flexible, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's-
Said,
Speaking
I
of staying
can't
loose,
even begin to imagine what you're actually implying here, Tom. But
I recall that's what you said to Jack, was just to stay loose and to relax. Jack said, "Please take it easy on me. My O's still lowercase."
So does that help clear up the innuendo now? Do we get our facts right of exactly what transpired? Because I think, we'll let the audience interpret to the best of their ability what they think the takeaway is from it. You got a bunch of perspectives. We all know at the end of the day, I try to get a good night's sleep, and I'm trying to forget all about the incident. So let's move on.
I do want to let everybody know that
We had to edit out this part.
Yeah, this is going to report stuff.
something to remember. The van that we came down in was a cargo van. There was a front seat and a passenger seat, or driver's seat and a passenger seat,
That's a good point.
and beanbag chairs in the back. So there wasn't a lot of support. People were
We're pretty comfortable.
if you weren't good with a beanbag chair, then it was going to be an uncomfortable ride down.
It was. So,
And we did do a little reconnoitering the first night. I mean, we went out to dinner, we checked out the road network to verify that we had good routes.
In and out.
In and out.
Yeah.
We went down to the Bowery, we checked out.
We checked that out,
Sorry.
down in the gut as
I will
future
say I
sailors.
slept with one eye open that night.
Yeah, yes, that's what Dan said. Does he recall you telling Dan to sleep with one eye open? That was where it was going. So. But
I recall we were doing it in rotating shift.
that's what a lot
I've
of
got
people
the
thought
first
you were
watch.
doing at rotation.
Okay, enough. Enough about the room. Enough about the room in the first
The
night.
next
I do
morning.
know the poor.
Well, I do want to go. Wait, I do want to be fair. Rick, I have to know about the palmetto bugs. Away from the vibrations and stuff like that. Talk to me
Then
about
they
the
return.
palmetto bugs.
That was not a very clean room, and they.
Before we got there.
Before we got there, we didn't trash it, but the bugs were around, and it's just not a very comfortable situation when you're sitting there, you're trying to get some rest, and you feel something light running across your arm. That's good God Almighty.
First he thought it was Jack. But,
I was going to realize. Does that bring back some memories of that night?
I thought
Those aren't pillows.
Tender touches.
I thought there were bugs.
But they tried to carry Rick away as a war bride. I'm going to tell you, they took a shine to Rick. So he was the first one to bathe the next day. It's because they are pestilence carriers.
So Sunday dawns.
Sunday dawns. That would have been
Not
what,
too early.
the 14th of October. Yeah, not too early because we've been driving for 12 hours plus.
Okay.
No, I mean, it could have come earlier.
So what was Operation Pup Snatch's next phase?
Breakfast.
Okay.
So we went to Pancake/Waffle House because again, it met the the primary requirements. The food was adequate enough to sustain life and create a bowel movement, and the cost was right. So we did that, and then we headed into town. And again, as Dan said, we took a look at the road route and to see what we needed to do. And then from there, we went to the old Citadel. Because the old Citadel is the barracks at the new Citadel at the time. Now they've been torn down because they weren't hurricane proof, but they were modeled after the old Citadel. So we did some reconnoitering at the old Citadel in case we had to get into barracks. We didn't know exactly where they kept the dogs. So if we had to get into barracks, we needed to understand, what the layout was like.
So this was still daylight.
This is daylight.
Yeah,
This
this
is
is
after
morning.
This is after breakfast. We did
So you go to the Citadel itself. You start your reconnoitering,
At the
Did
old
you-
Citadel, which is different. The old Citadel is the original complex that was their equivalent of VMI as an armory during the
Okay.
1800s. So then they built the new Citadel further up the peninsula. So this is down in the
We're ready
city.
for hostile action, because if things went south in the operation, we wanted to quickly, grab the dog, make our way out of there, provide our own protection, defense, make sure we had a good head count, and then get out of there.
Now, in good military planning, did you do a rehearsal at the old Citadel?
We did. Yeah, we even locked ourselves into the Citadel to see if we could get out.
Is there any evidence of that?
I've got some pictures I'll make available to the audience.
Documentary? Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Now, so did you move then from the old Citadel to the current Citadel?
We did. We
Okay.
went from there on up, and we parked the van off campus so that we could again, leaving that trail clean. We didn't want people to see a Virginia license plate and a van and a bunch of guys with short or nearly no hair getting out of the van. So we then made our way on campus on foot.
Now, did you go as total team pup snatch, or did you break up into pairs?
We started out as a team, and then as we got to look at the lay of the land, Bruno had broken out the detailed planning documents that we had for each of us, and so we each took our scripts and then walked through what we were to do. So we scattered and went around the campus on our own.
Now, you had a team. Who was with you?
Bruno and I were together.
Okay, and then was it the other three?
No, it was Gunny was off by himself, taking a look over by the library, if I recall. Dan, I think you went on over towards the museum area.
Yeah, Rick and I think
You and Rick, right.
Gunny, did anything pop up during your reconnaissance of interest
As I
to the
recall,
audience?
The one piece I recall is that I saw some opportunities. The freshmen, or they call themselves the Knobs, down there at the Citadel. They have their own line, and so they actually go on the outside perimeter, walking around in a line, and trying to keep themselves away from the upperclassmen. So I feigned as I was an upperclassman, came up behind a couple of them and said, "Whoa, Knob," and gave them a challenge, and they stopped. And then I started asking questions to get intel. So I was asking a lot of questions of, where's the battalion at? What battalion are you in? Where are the dogs at? Where are the dogs at? And trying to get information. But the Knobs really didn't know much, and so I just kind of strained them a little bit for a while and sweated them out. And but basically they broke down and didn't tell me anything.
Dan, what about you on your reconnaissance? Anything interesting?
Not too much.
No.
We
Rick?
looked over the various areas that we could ingress, egress.
Yeah, we
from
looked for
the
some
facility.
type of compound where the dogs would be kept, and nothing in our area.
Well, I think we did eventually locate it, or you located
Over in
the
near
wired
training
compound
facility.
where they were
Yeah.
being held.
Yeah, but we did find out, that security at the Citadel was much different than it was at VMI. It's not as open a campus as VMI was, and I mean they've got more student guards than we did.
More
They
walls
had
and
more walls
fence.
and more uniform guards walking around and driving around on campus as campus police. Far more robust security measures than we had at VMI, where Barney Fife would be looking for his bullet in his pocket.
Now, you did you physically see the target at all? Physically see it?
Never,
Never. Okay.
never.
So at this point, the team comes back together. You're still in the vicinity of the new Citadel. All this intel is gathered. Everybody gives their report. Is a decision made at that point, since you did not have a fixed target for the Bulldog? Did something occur there to modify the planning?
No, we were fairly dejected. We basically got our intel together, went back to the hotel to distill what we've learned, and came up with the fact that we thought it was just going to be impossible to find that dog given the amount of time that we had.
Okay, Jack, on that point, we've been talking for about 45 minutes, gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and take a break.
Guys, one of the things I think we forgot to mention is that one of the real attractions of going down to Charleston was that they've got some stuff there that they just didn't have in Lexington. And I know that we were all thinking the same thing. You go down to Charleston on a pup snatch operation, you're looking for a hooker. And when I'm looking for a hooker, I usually call Jack. And so, hey Jack.
Hey, Jack, can you get me a hooker?
Yep, picking you up one right now.
There's nothing like a wet hooker, guys, is there?
Telling you what,
And we always rely on Jack for our hookers.
Well, we're back from our commercial break with Team Pup Snatch. Jack, when we left off, you and the rest of the team had come back from your reconnaissance of the old and new Citadel with hot intelligence, went back to your hotel room. Go ahead and take us from there.
well, before I get into that, I just want to let you know that I did dig through my my rucksack and I found a memento of our first night there. And Gunny, Dan, I just want to give this back to you. Here's your corn cob. So, so we decided we were going to head on back to the hotel. We needed to regroup because we were just not going to get the dog.
Yeah, it was apparent that the primary target was just, you know, was just not gonna be attainable.
deep.
So at that point, we're basically looking for a secondary target.
We had to
that's
call
not
in
gonna
all
be
of them.
nothing.
We called in all of them at that stage.
Our first thought was vandalism. We had
It's always an option.
always an option. We had fireworks. We had VMI decals and stickers that we were going to plaster around the posts.
I don't think vandalism is the right term, because we really were not going in there with the intention
That was
of-
not our intent.
of
No, I would like to
destruction. In
refer
fact,
to
what
it.
we wanted to do was,
To
you know, it's
decorate.
So we-
important to go back to the initial objective here.
That's why he's
Was
PAO,
that-
guys. That's why he's PAO.
Right.
Here, go ahead.
Is that, you know, we had the whole contest for the Silver Sheikah, the military classic of the South, and we wanted to strike fear in the hearts of the enemy, you know,
That's
and
right,
so
kick 'em back on
clearly
their heels.
clearly taking that mascot would have been the primary way of doing that. But falling back on that, we wanted them to know we were there, and there was nowhere that we couldn't reach in and touch them.
Exactly.
That's an excellent point.
They
Yeah.
they could not hide 720 miles away.
Doesn't matter how much security you have, we were still gonna get in there and we were gonna show them who we were.
Okay, gentlemen, with that being said, Jack, we're still at the point where an audible has been called. You have to look for a secondary target. Talk to me about what transpired in the hotel room with regard to that.
Well, we were racking our brains. Obviously, as you've
These are
already
good
heard,
hookers, by
that
the way.
you know, as Rick was saying, you know, we thought about some constructive advertising initiatives that would get the point across
Good
that
point.
we had been there, and that, you know, VMI was a force to be reckoned with. But then Gunny rose to the occasion and stood up and pulled out photographs of our second target and circulated them among the team. And that target was 3rd Battalion Commander.
It was a
And-
difficult assignment too, as I recall. I mean, you got a school with 4,000 to 5,000 size student body. I mean, it's a needle in a haystack, really. It was unbelievable. So we started getting closer to the barracks. We were putting
How are we gonna
ourselves
coax him out?
right.
How are we gonna, we had to go through that planning step, figure out how we're gonna coax this guy out to where we can take it.
Right. And so, fortunately, you know, Rick Fowler was right behind us with the van. Dan Kahn was inside the van, as I recall, and
You're jumping ahead now, Gunny. You're
Okay.
jumping ahead to
Good.
the actual execution.
yeah,
We-
right, that's
We
true.
were still planning at this point.
Right,
We were
right.
going to
True.
Yep.
decide that our secondary target now is our primary. 3rd Battalion Commander we both knew from Officer Candidate School, had a good rapport with. So we had to figure out how are we going to coax to come with us. We figured he'd play along because he was a good guy and you know, he would go with us. We'd be okay. Take him back to VMI, we could put him in a room, we're gonna be able to feed him. We figured VMI would be okay with that, we'd get him in a uniform, you know, nobody'd know the difference. And he'd hang out with us for a week, and then we'd send him back to his brother Knobs when during the football game.
He was a good target for all the right reasons. He was a battalion commander
High,
and
high profile.
high profile, and we thought he was going to be amenable to the whole thing because we knew him from OCS.
Jack, with that being said, pick up from there.
Well, you got to understand though that this was a huge commitment among all of us. At this point, we subconsciously had agreed to a kidnapping. We had already gone across 2 state lines. Bringing a dog back across 2 state lines was not an issue, other than the fact that with a bulldog, you'd probably have to stop every 30 minutes. But now we got to bring a kidnapped victim back across 2 state lines. And this is not like kidnapping a Virginia Tech pokey, where you just bring him back into Rockbridge County. This is kidnapping, and we could have, at that point, You know, we didn't even think about the repercussions. We just agreed that we were going to do it.
So it was all for one, one for all. Huge term that you've just thrown out, Jack. That's a bombshell, the word kidnapping. The rest of the team had to have reacted to that in the hotel room with the knowledge that what was being proposed by the team was actually a federal crime. Rick, your thoughts on that?
I'm trying to remember what my thoughts were at that time. 31 years after the fact, I'm not sure I do. But I think in my heart, I would think more like what Gunny was saying, that it wasn't really a kidnapping because he was probably going to want to come along. It was just a good college prank.
Bruno.
Well, I recall a couple of things. One of them being just stunned that that Gunny had overcome his, was clearly, you know, we all had those little doubts, and yet he rose to the challenge.
He did rise.
Really, and I've respected him for it ever since. You know, I mean, so whatever, you know, whatever concerns I had were erased with that, you know, at that moment. But yeah, I thought that after the initial use of force, that he was, number one, going to see that he was pretty significantly outnumbered, and number two, he probably was going to actually enjoy coming along after he had gotten over his shock. So I thought this was definitely going to be a doable thing. I was a little concerned, you know, I don't have a southern accent, and I was a little concerned about the South Carolina and North Carolina state cops, you know, because, well, truthfully, I'd heard stories. You know, I don't want to mention him, and Jack, you know, and I mean, Jack, he already kind of lends his, you know, his appearance is, it lends itself to a little question on the part of any cop that might have stopped us. So there was definitely a...
The movie Deliverance wasn't that old.
It wasn't. That's
It
right.
wasn't.
And it really, and that's, you know, it wasn't that far away from there. So,
Well,
so
and-
all
and
of this
Bruno
stuff was
had a
going through
police
my
record.
minds, you know, so...
Bruno did have a police record.
And I do have a question for Bruno. Now, as a self-proclaimed PAO, Public Affairs Officer, for the unit, the Pup Snatch unit, well, how did that fit in with the use of the term kidnapping? I mean, did you think about that at all, and the political and media implications?
Well, yeah, I think that we...
This is for political correctness, I just want to...
Right, I'm not sure that we actually used the term kidnapping. I think that it was detention and removal were the terms that we were using with the personnel involved.
Yeah, I think it was an extraction is the way we referred to it,
Yeah,
as
so-
opposed to, we never used the word kidnapping.
Okay.
Right.
Ever.
But we were taking a huge risk in the whole venture because we were going down the lion's den again. We were going to be exposed because he knew us in turn, so the tables could have easily been turned to the other side.
Right.
Or
We had
were
to come out,
exposed,
we had
and,
to step out there and reveal that we were at the Citadel.
Dan, any reservations? Again, now they've played down the word after I've exposed the seriousness of the term kidnapping. Now, some of the members of the team have downgraded or diminished whether that term was ever used. But once you talked about the detention and removal,
I agree. We never thought of it as a true kidnapping. We felt that it would be a good sport about the whole thing and would enjoy coming along with us as a part of a good-natured college adventure.
Well,
Well,
spending
you know, at
those-
some point, though, that does kind of indicate a few things about it. I mean, he was a Marine, that's the first thing. So you kind of got to approach that and say, probably no sense of humor. I mean, right up front, you know. I mean, it's a given, right?
It's a given.
Said so, and then he went to the Citadel, which means he probably didn't have a package either. Said so between the two of them, you
We
know,
are called
in
knobs.
retrospect, that was a real failing on our planning, you know. So,
Well,
So-
we figured he'd enjoy just the opportunity to spend 5 days at an accredited institution.
right, manly days, really. I mean,
Manly
when it comes
days.
right down to it, you know.
okay, Sunday afternoon of Operation Pup Snatch, day 2. After all of this has been said and done, I assume that a decision was made to execute Plan B. I'll use Plan B, that's my term,
Yep.
Plan B. So take us from there, Jack, after the decision to execute Plan B.
Well, we actually were very happy that we had already gone down to the old Citadel because, again, we needed to know whether or not we needed to get inside the barracks. But as was mentioned earlier, there's about 4,000 folks in that Corps of Cadets. 4 battalions. Each battalion's got its own barracks. And we were not sure exactly which room he was in and how we were going to have to get him. So we went over some options that we had as to, you know, Rick was going to be the getaway driver, no questions about it. We had no way, we didn't have cell phones, they weren't existent at the time. Walkie-talkies at that time were World War II vintage, we didn't have anything like that. So how were we going to get the word that we had found and acquired the target? And so we went over some options as to how we were going to get the word to Rick so he could get in and we could extract and get out of there. So we went over some of those options and then went to Chow. And had dinner out in town, again, some small place, and then made our way back over to the Citadel, where we kept looking at pictures of as it got darker, trying to find them among all the cadets on a Sunday evening walking to and from their academic buildings. And
we began executing as we had planned.
Right.
Tom and I went over to the 3rd Battalion Barracks, attempted to gain the entrance to the barracks or to request to see. We were in town to visit our good friend that we knew from Officer Candidate School. Meanwhile, Jack and Bruno were providing flank security for us in case there was any bum rush on the part of the Citadel cadets. And Rick kept the motor running and the doors open across the parade deck as a quick escape.
Ready for a
route.
quick getaway.
Right.
Rick, were you ever approached by campus police with that van running
No.
on a regular or on a constant basis?
No, but then again, I wasn't parked so much as I kept driving.
And that didn't even draw any attention. Just luck of the draw on that one. Just
Yeah.
things were in your favor, looking good for Operation Pup Snatch.
Well, we had gone out and done some recon of the area, and so we were kind of familiar with the
There was a
patrol
little bit of
patterns
the
of the
cycle
security
of
guys.
security.
Right.
And so, Rick was driving so that he wasn't going to draw attention to himself, So that's,
Okay, Gunny, what do you remember at this? Again, you were with Dan trying to acquire the target, as Dan said. What's your recollections?
Once we got up, again, going to the old Citadel was very helpful, but once we got up to their equivalent of the Sallyport, their entrance into that battalion barracks, we knew that we were going right in the risk. We were asking questions, where does he live? Is he the battalion commander here? We were asking if somebody can go and get him for us, or we can go and see him. So there was a lot of, Citadel cadets beginning to go out and look for him. And they came back to us and said he's not in this room. So at that stage, that really, let the air out of the mission. We really thought, we waited around for a while, but again, we didn't want to get compromised. We were running out of time. It was getting late. We really thought we were getting ready to abort the mission. And just as I was really getting ready to suggest we call it, at that stage, Manna walked in from head.
I'd already gotten back in the van. You guys were making one last sweep.
And all of a sudden, there comes up with his books from the library. I remember distinctly and studying, and I said, I didn't realize you were down here. The battalion commander, is this where you live? And he goes, Gunny, I haven't seen you. What are you doing down here? And I was thinking off the top of my cuff of my head. I said, I'm down here trying to visit my brother. And I said, he's in 1st Battalion. I'd like to go and see him. And Vito said, I didn't know you had a brother down here. You never told me. And let's go see him. And so we started, walking out of the barracks together. And as we're doing that, Bruno and I are side by side. All of a sudden, very briskly, Jack Keane and Bruno Losted roll into our flanks. And we had good perimeter security at that stage.
Let me interrupt you there, Gunny. Jack and Bruno, what do you remember about that point? At some point in that little exchange that Gunny just described, you two had to observe that Gunny had now approached, and maybe you even recognized from the pictures and your intel that this was, but Gunny had a cadet. And you didn't, you either knew or you didn't know that it was the target.
Yeah, I don't think we knew it was the target, simply because we were behind him, and he was
Behind?
We were behind him,
Okay.
and only Gunny was facing us. But as we got closer, we could hear the conversation, and so we kind of quickened our pace to get up alongside.
Now, I have to admit, this is just like what you would see in a movie on television or in real life, a snatch and grab, where you see the members of a team on the perimeter just come in, appear out of nowhere when the primary, which was the Gunny, made contact with the target. So at this point, your recollection is the target was covered in the back, Gunny was facing him, so that there was theoretically no retreat at this point for...
End of the parade ground, as I recall.
Right.
And at that point, I recognized that Gunny had located and we had the flank security in place behind him. So Rick and I started pulling up.
Well, we were expecting a hostile grab, so I had to kind of wave off Jack and Bruno a little bit, and they very professionally came in behind us. They observed my mannerisms, and we had a very amicable right. And because we were well away from the van, and as we got closer and closer to the van, Dan at that stage opened up the van
Threw the door open, reached out my hand, said, "How you doing?" He looked at me and said, "Dan, what are you doing down here?" "Gunny, Dan." Shake my hand. I grabbed and pulled Gunny, Bruno.
Amazing.
Shut the door
Jack
behind
shoved
him.
him in.
Got into the back of
Rick,
the
get
van.
us out of here.
So again, right out of television or the movies,
Oh.
bam, I am totally impressed, number one, that it just went down like that, because that is something, again, you guys did not practice the actual snatch because it was for plan B.
Right.
So it went off like clockwork. Kudos to all of you on that one. Now you have a target, a human in the back of the van. Jack King, take me to the back of the van.
Now we're committed. And so Rick says, "So where are we going to?" And I says, "Well, you come on up here to this intersection, make a right. We'll go on over to the 1st Battalion Barracks. We'll get Gunny's brother." So Ricky says, "Okay." So we get to the intersection, and Ricky makes a left. And he says, "Where are you going?" He says, "I said make a right." And Rick says, "Well, I thought you made a left." And he says, "Well, now we're off campus." And he says, "We're going down one of the one-way streets in Charleston, very narrow streets in Charleston, and that side of town." And he says, "Now you got to make a U-turn. We got to drive through the city to get back to the campus." Rick says, "Well, just give me directions, and I'll do what I need to do." And as we kept going on down,
We're talking him up.
we're talking him up, right? And so he finally realizes that we really have no intention of turning around. And so he basically says, "What are you guys doing?" And we said, "Well, we're going to bring you back to VMI. The game's next weekend." You know,
Now, who actually said that, Jack? Was it
That
you?
was
Was it Gunny?
Gunny. No, that
okay.
was Gunny.
Okay.
That was Gunny. Said,
Gunny, what do you remember about that?
Again, I was thinking at that stage, best to give him the truth, and hopefully he was going to be pretty much good with that plan. He was going to agree with us and come with us, and it was going to be easy. We were going to drive up on 95 and turn him over at halftime, and it was a history done deal. And I was very shocked to see his response after that, and as were my teammates.
We did, however, have a contingency, right, for restraining him, I think, right? So that's,
well, we did, but he started, he was a little
Take us through the reaction, Jack.
He was very excitable. He said, "You can't take me back there. I got tests." And we said, "Look, blow off the test. You're going to spend, we'll drive up on Monday or tonight. You'll spend 4 or 5 days in an accredited university."
They'll
You're
forgive
gonna-
you. You've
That's
been
right.
taken.
That's right. You
couldn't
were
take the
taken.
test.
That's exactly right. You weren't
It's an
available to
excused
take the
absence.
test. And
He was getting physically, he was emotionally distraught, and I remember he had these number 2 very sharpened pencils. He had like 2 or 3 of them.
Faber-Harts, I think they were.
Yeah,
I got a pretty good look at him.
He was, beginning to get defensive and wave those around, and said, I really need to stay here and get my test done. Not that we were concerned about the pencils, but we can just see his emotional reaction to
We didn't really want to get physical.
But at some point now that Dan's brought that up, did it become physical? Jack?
It got physical only when he started crying.
Okay.
I mean crying.
He got physical before he started crying, when he jumped on me.
Well, actually, he started crying first, and Bruno said,
Okay.
Bruno said, "I can't believe he's crying." To this day, 31 years later, I am convinced that in 1991, Penny Marshall had Tom Hanks sit down with Bruno prior to his role for the coach in A League of Their Own. Bruno just sat there and said, "I can't believe you're crying. There's no crying. You're going to be a Marine officer and you are crying? I can't believe you're frigging crying." And Bruno looks at me and he says, "Jack, he's crying. What do you think we ought to do with him?" And I'm sitting in the back of the van on the floor, and I've got a coil of rope in my lap. And I just looked up at Bruno, and I picked up the rope, and I kind of snapped it, and I said, "Bruno, I think we ought to tie him up, drag him behind the van." And when I said that, he leapt right across me, over Bruno, over me, and assaulted Rick.
Rick, pick it up from there.
I'm driving, all of a sudden this body is crashing over the seat back onto my shoulder, grabbing for the key that he would expect to be on the right-hand side steering wheel. Luckily in the van, the key is over on the left. He had no chance of getting that. But as it is, you know, we're driving back and forth trying not to hit anything while he's sitting there doing everything he can to stop the car. And
So we
luckily
physically pulled him off.
they
the rig.
finally pulled him out.
So Dan, Gunny, and Bruno.
No.
Dan,
Dan, Bruno, and Jack pulled him off of Rick.
I understand, but I was going to say Dan, Gunny, and Bruno were observing this interplay. Did he move quick enough, observing it, just observing it, in the quickness of his attack on Rick? You had to be stunned. I think the four other members of the team, you had to be stunned at the viciousness of his attack, yes or no?
Incredibly stunned. Brian.
What did you guys think about that, Dan, Gunny, and Bruno? Nothing? Okay, moving on. Oh,
They're
you had
still
something?
stunned.
Yeah, still
We were
stunned
so-
31
we were
years later.
surprised that he was again reacting this way. You know, we were still taken aback by this whole
Well, you know,
crying.
yeah, I mean, doing
the
the after
attack
action
on a
review later
driver.
on, I mean, we clearly should have prepared for that contingency and
We
taken
didn't have the
appropriate measures,
ether.
so. Yeah, I mean,
So one thing.
I kind of blame myself for that, really. I mean, I should have been more forceful with Jack and just said, look, tie him up. You know, and I was trying to be a straight up guy, and you know, I mean, he was a Marine. You wouldn't really expect that kind of speed of reaction and stuff, but you know, I mean, he came
Dude,
across with it. Said, well, you know, I mean, and he was Dan's,
Spoken like a
know,
true Army officer.
that's Dan's friend, and you know, and I figured, well, you know, if nothing, he was psychologically, he was going to be broken just by the betrayal that he, you know, he just witnessed, you know, among guys he thought it was his friends. Said, so really, you know, after between the crying and the leaping and everything, we were kind of caught unprepared there. You know,
It was a little disconcerting. I mean, it basically at that stage, I mean, with the ropes and the tying up and the gagging, I mean, I was beginning to see, you know, 5 to 10 years flashing before our eyes.
Yes, it was beginning to change. From
Which
an
I might
elite-
add was our concern with bringing you along on this mission all along.
that you would
Was
see
that
them.
you were going to see that and then,
Waiver.
you know,
I wavered.
So Jack, you seem to be, other than Bruno, who is again identified as at the time a psycho, you seem to me at the time to be the most detached and cold. So what happened? Transpired. He's attacking, assaulting your
I was
driver.
attacking one of my brotherettes.
That's right. So
And I was fed up with him. And we've had to get him off of Rick. First of all, we are swerving down a one-way street that had cars parked on both sides. Why we never sideswiped a car is just a testament to Rick's
That's
ability.
just how
to drive.
good I am.
It's just a
say no
testament.
more.
And I mean, we managed to make it. We made it down to the Battery. And if you're familiar with Charleston, that's a nice drive from the Citadel down to the Battery, where we were finally able to turn around and get him back. And at that point, we just wanted to get rid of him. I remember Bruno turning to me and saying, you know, it would have been a hell of a lot easier if we had just gotten a dog and had to stop for the dog to relieve itself every 30 minutes on the highway. And thinking back, we probably should have gone looking for the dog again instead of you. But I was just a little upset that you know, here we got our brother Rat, who is trying desperately to keep us on the road, and only 3 of us pull off of him. Tom, I got to tell you, man, I was disappointed in you then, and to a degree, I'm still disappointed in you. I know you guys were friends, but I'm just telling you, you had a brother Rat who was an extremist. You could have done a little bit more than cowering in the back of the van near a door, thinking of your own skin and a quick getaway at the next stoplight.
I don't recall it that way.
Gunny, I have to go to you, Gunny. Again, there's another from the team leader.
Things are kind of fuzzy, but again, you know, there's a lot of things flashing. But I didn't get a very good night's sleep the night before with all the noise and the giggling from the bed next to us. But when I saw that Jack was breaking out the rope, I mean, I began to get a little concerned. I mean, if I would have been any of us in that position, I'm sure you would have been concerned as well.
So you admit that, at least you were there. That was going through your head. That's honesty. I have to appreciate that.
I do admit that. I do admit I probably faltered a little bit. I'm not sure if I didn't participate in that, but I think I was able to verbally get to compose himself and kind of resolve the issue. We determined that it's best just to drop off at the nearest.
Okay, so,
I recall you using some strong gunny language like candidate, and it snapped off.
I do recall that. I do recall you yelling, "Candidate, knock it off," and he did.
interesting. Thank you, Jack. Now, so we're at the point now in Operation Pup Snatch where Target acquired an actual scuffle. Again, I couldn't write this better for television or a movie. The scuffle in the van. Excellent driving right out of probably Bullitt or the French Connection, missing those cars. Again, it's all transpiring, just like you would see on television or in the movies. The assault on the driver has been subdued. Control has been regained, I would take it, over the target.
Right.
Okay, so now I have to believe that things are settling down in the van. What transpires next, and then bring us to how the operation concludes at that point. Jack.
I think we basically brought him back into the van, to the after part of the van, and told Rick, just get to the Citadel. And you brought us to the alumni gate, and we opened the door and let him go. Which is basically, and I don't think, I don't even think we stopped.
Was it unceremonious? Would you, unceremonious?
It's hard to to really describe just how much. It wasn't just complaining; it was bleeding. You know, wah, ma, ma.
Yeah.
I mean, constantly. You know, instead of a bulldog, I mean, this is more like a little lamb. You know, it was really. It actually was a little heartening from some respect. They said, these are the guys that we're going to be facing next weekend. I mean, you know, so from that perspective, this isn't going to be that bad.
Okay, so now, short of either a fist fight, a melee at the school, or some of you have been to combat, you have that high. You had to be on an adrenaline high from all the crap that had happened in the van. You've now disgorged your cargo.
Yeah, I'd say we vomited the cargo.
Okay. He's out. The door is closed. Rick is taking you off post, off the Citadel.
Right.
Talk to me.
We never got back on the post. We did not. We dropped him right there at the gate.
Okay.
Made a quick U-turn. I don't even think Rick stopped at the van.
I think it was kind of like a Lapes extraction there, you know, kind of a.
It was pretty. It was a stop. It was a brief stop.
So talk to me now as the adrenaline starts to subside. I just have to believe that you guys were on an adrenaline high at that point. You start to come down off of that. The conversation in the van and what happened after that.
Huge disappointment. We had the high because we had planned this and executed it and did not anticipate the level of
Resistance?
cowardice.
Yeah.
Cowardice.
He obviously could not face the superiority of VMI, and that must have had something to do with how he broke down. But now we had nothing to do. We had done what we wanted to and retreated from it.
Well, there were a lot of F-bombs.
Well, right. You know.
We were pretty PO'd.
Yes.
We were cursing ourselves out.
We didn't get the dog.
Didn't
Now
get
we
the
had
dog.
to turn back in like a small fish.
Didn't tie him up. We were pretty upset with ourselves.
So what happened next?
We went back to the hotel.
Now this is still Sunday.
This is still Sunday, the 14th.
Give me a time frame.
It's probably about 23:30, 11:30 p.m. It's
It was about 10 in the evening when we first got in.
Okay.
yeah. So we got back to the hotel and fairly dejected. And I'll remember Bruno. Bruno just stood up and he said, "Look, we're not going back empty-handed." And he walked over to the bed and he rolled out a chart, a terrain chart of the Citadel. All the buildings marked, every one of the monuments, the statues marked, where everything was. I mean, it's almost as if he had done a full survey of the Citadel complex.
And you can go on record, Bruno, you can go on record, you did not get any satellite imagery, right? That was not available to you?
This was pre-satellite imagery. You know,
This is pre-satellite.
Well,
No overflights, no U2 coverage.
Roarsat, you know, that kind of thing. You know?
No U2 coverage.
No U2, no SR-71. CIA is not allowed to do those kinds of
Roger
intel
that.
ops in CONUS. So
So you had, again, good intel, at least.
Wasn't even an inkling in somebody's mind yet.
All right, so take me through it.
Google was
So,
a
I mean,
mathematical,
Bruno
That's
knew,
right.
I mean, down to the foot, you know, distances between academic buildings. I think, you know, when he had a little bit of free time, when he wasn't casing a joint with me, he was pacing the distance between buildings and monuments. And he said, look, we're going back. And here's what we're going to do. And we decided that we were going to do some, as we say, constructive advertising, and let them know that VMI had been around.
There was a fair amount of discussion about that, though. 'Cause
There was.
We knew that we'd already, kicked over the hornet's nest here. We've grabbed and had to spit him back.
And they're going to be
The only
waiting.
saving grace, though, was
They're gonna
that
be
there
looking
was
for us.
there was some question as to whether he was going to admit to any of his other fellow Citadel cadets that he'd A, put himself into that situation, and B, just
How
how
he got out of
dishonorably he'd acted when faced with a challenge. So
But there were
I
enough
thought
people
that
that knew that there were strangers roaming campus looking for. And I mean,
Right,
there
because
were,
Jack was there, they were pretty obvious strangers too. I mean, these weren't like normal people on their campus. These were
Now, the only thing that I can equate this to is the movie Flight of the movie Flight of the Intruder, where they fly through, their bombs don't drop, they swing around, and he says they'd never expect us to go through that again. Now, again, I have to give it to you guys, ballsy, because I agree with you that you've kicked over the hornet's nest. Some people, I don't know how many, but some people knew that something was up. Something was not normal on that evening at the Citadel. Jack, when we last left off, you were talking about Bruno saying that the team pup snatch was not going back empty-handed. Take it from there.
so we looked at the chart, and we started to divvy up targets at that point. And so we had a lot of VMI stickers, logos, the monogram. We had some red, yellow, and white spray paint, and we decided that we were going to go ahead and let them know we were around. We also had made a stop at a munitions cache at south of the border and picked up some fireworks so that we could roust them towards the end of our mission. So at that point, Bruno and I decided we would take the aft end of their complex and move on down towards the training facility. And we see Gunny and Dan took the academic buildings and some of the barracks, I believe. And Rick was just going to keep the motor running so we could get out of there when needed. And we slowly...
I got some of the tanks.
Oh, you did, that's right. That's right. You abandoned your station to get a little bit of glory on your own. But,
To have some fun.
So he was like on
was never
12
fun.
o'clock high where the chaplain and the doctor had to get in on this. They just
Yeah,
couldn't miss the
exactly.
big one.
Exactly.
So Rick wanted to get in on it. Let me
Kind of like that
take
21.
exactly.
If he got caught, we were hosed.
Let me take you back just a little bit. At some point, because of what I know of the VMI permit process, that you guys started to get into a time crunch. Your time there was not unlimited. Your permit expired. You had until when to get back to VMI?
That's our supper roll call, Monday, 15 October of
Okay.
79.
And we're still in
in
late
Charleston.
Sunday.
At
It's,
this point,
at this
it's nearly
point,
midnight.
at this point, it's midnight, beyond midnight.
Wow.
We're talking.
Totally impressive.
We probably left the hotel. It was after midnight by the time we left the hotel.
Checked out and everything at that
no,
point?
No, we didn't check out.
Okay.
We didn't check out.
All right, so pick us up from there. You decide to go back to the Citadel campus
We did.
and
So
have the Institute be heard from, pick it up from there.
Okay, so we headed on back to the Citadel. Again, left the van off campus, and made our way back on campus on foot. Bruno and I made our way down towards the training complex.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there. So what happened at, we're going to break this down now. What happened at the training complex? What kind of trouble?
Well, we had an incident where Bruno and I ended up nearly getting caught by post security. And we were basically on our bellies, low crawling around out there as the police vehicle had pulled to the side and had the searchlight was looking across into the training facility.
And did you believe that they were actually looking for you, or did you just think this was a random patrol?
It could have been a random patrol. It could have been that they were at a more heightened sense of security based upon the fact that so many people have been looking for me that night. Based upon what we saw, with crying, he couldn't have been a real popular guy within the Corps other than being somebody that they poke fun at to get him to cry. So obviously people were out there looking for him. There's got to be a reason for it.
So for posterity and for where you and Bruno were, what do you want to leave our viewers with? What mark did you and Bruno leave?
Well, we left a monogram on the rappelling wall. And then,
Spider on the rappel.
and then made our way back to the academic quad and left a few monograms on their statue of the Bulldog. And they had an APC, Armored Personnel Carrier, that we left a couple of monograms, stickers, on the sides.
Okay, our other team. Now, you were mentioning Rick. Rick said he couldn't miss the big one. So what did Rick do? Rick, take it from there.
Nothing is massive as Jack was talking about. I had a few stickers and got pasted them on. They had military vehicles all over the campus.
But in all fairness to you, you were a driver, not an operator at that point. You know, operators as in spec ops operator. You were a driver.
We like to say that Ricky was chief logistician.
There you go. So you did make your mark, though. You did.
I did get to make my mark.
Yeah.
And left.
But an unsung position in operations like this is the driver. Again, you provided the van. You were the driver. I mean, the op would not have happened if it wasn't for you. So I applaud you on that small amount of mayhem that you did perpetrate upon the Citadel.
It was my pleasure.
Dan, Gunny, your part's in the mayhem Plan C.
We had the barracks, so we had a number of stickers. And we moved from one barracks to the next, placing those VMI stickers on the outside of the barracks. They had, as I recall, they had some sort of display case out there that had the battalion command structure, you know, from the regimental commander on down, stuck out there, and a Citadel on top. And so we put the VMI sticker over the Citadel piece, put some on the gates,
Some on the barracks windows too, if I recall.
a couple of barracks windows, and then we then maneuvered to the rear side of the barracks in preparation to fire off the explosives we had as the final farewell to the Citadel.
Gunny, your recollections before we move to the actual artillery firing.
It went very smoothly. I mean, considering it was all impromptu, I think everybody well coordinated, and we eluded the local police. I mean, there's a lot of people in the barracks as well still, even at that early hours.
Okay, so now Dan has brought up that there was artillery or some other type of mayhem outside of the painting and marking or graffitiing or tagging. The new term is tagging, which I can't stand. It's graffiti. So you made your mark, made the VMI was heard from in a graphic sense. Now, Dan had mentioned artillery. Talk to me about that, Jack.
Well, you procured a variety of fireworks when we stopped off at south of the border, and constructed a homemade Stalin organ for the side door of the van, and taped some bottle rockets to the side of the van, and we would pull up alongside their entrances to barracks and let loose a stream of bottle rockets into their barracks, and then Rick would pull up to the next one and we'd fire fireworks into there. We had all four of their barracks and woke up every one of the Citadel cadets. Every light flashed on, and then we hightailed it off campus.
Right.
Rick, what do you remember there? Obviously, you were driving the van. Your recollections of that, can you add it to anything Jack said?
No, he's got that part pretty well down.
Dan?
The only thing I remember at that point was feeding feet through the main gate of the Citadel and having a rather quizzical look from the guards as to who are these guys running out of the Citadel at this hour after all this crap's been going off.
And I remember the fact that we were really lucky we didn't start a fire in the van with all the fireworks that we had that was cooking off in the van as well as we were launching off. So.
Gunny, your recollections of the Calliope firing?
Yeah, it was just beautiful. I mean, I wish we had some photos of the whole thing. Definitely, I think it caused a stir. I think we woke up some folks. And
Gunny, you're pretty subdued at this point about that. Is there a reason for that, or?
I just think at that stage of the game, I mean, we had to go with another plan, and that was it.
And your actions spoke louder than words. I mean, what else can you say, right?
Well,
Bruno,
it's
your recollections.
It's important to just to remember I mean, what was the objective? Because we use the term vandalism. We weren't vandalizing anything. What we were doing was a classic case of basically reaching in and disrupting the opposition. You know, getting into their thought process. You know, making them operate in a different way. In this case, you know, we're interrupting their sleep cycle. Said we're causing them the next day to have to look at their entire standard operating procedures. So that's what we were doing by marking these pretty carefully selected locations on the campus. They couldn't fail but to come out there and look at it and go, "We've been hit." So,
Right.
and we know we are not safe. In our own lair, we are not safe. I said, we gotta change the way we're doing business. That was
I
the
think we
point.
did things on our timeline. I
Yeah.
think
We did.
we accomplished everything we wanted to
I
accomplish.
think we sent the message that we wanted to send.
I have to admit, you guys were practicing a lot of the principles of Sun Tzu
Yeah.
in your assault. PAO, what did you think about that? Public affairs, did anything enter your head? I mean, you were wearing all kind of hats
Well, I
that
was
night.
thinking about that, you know, and I mean, the PAO portion came in after the fact as I was trying to put it all together into a, you know, into a summary, you know, that could be, we could broadcast to our own guys. So,
I think that was the one planning failure that we did probably all agree on, is that we didn't get a combat photographer to go with us and capture it all. That way we would have had the full proof.
Well, you know, yeah, in some
We were
ways we
looking
were
at
behind the
something
times, you know, I mean,
right.
there's, you know, the printed word is one thing, but pictures really carry a much stronger impression, you know, that.
Yeah, we were looking to have something tangible to bring back to VMI, and we didn't have it, you know, at the end of the day, and I think.
Now, as a videographer and a documentary specialist, I would be remiss, now that you brought that up, because in all of these years, and I'm wearing my videographer hat now as Mr. Bold, that it never entered my head that there is absolutely, that I know, that as of now, this moment, no proof of anything that you gentlemen have just told me. I believe you because I'm your brother rat.
Well,
What do you have to say to
we
some?
do have, as you can see right behind us, we do have, in fact, a newspaper story, you know, contemporary newspaper story of the assault.
Right.
I agree. I agree with that, but again, that
so-
could be perceived as propaganda.
Well, the other thing I'd like to say is that we did make an announcement in front of the Corps.
Again, I understand that. Again, propaganda.
Well, that's true. Although we did have you know, clandestine sources down there at the Citadel. We talked to later on, and you know, I understand that they were there was some major reaction down there. I
I
mean,
believe that
they were
went
hurt.
into their
They were
paper as well.
I'd also
Yeah.
like to say that, you know, for the last 31 years, we have been trying to find, and it's become well known to us, based upon friends from the class of '80 at the Citadel, that he is a shell of a man since that happened, and he's been in hiding for essentially the
Well,
last.
I heard he
two
had a
decades.
sex change operation.
He joined the Witness Protection Program too, so his name's been changed completely. He was
So you had firsthand reporting, or you queried someone that was actually there at the Citadel who
Oh, sure.
confirmed to
The game on
you.
the 20th of October, we saw lots of
Oh
Citadel
yeah, I
fans.
mean,
Right.
basically it's a, you know, a post-strike analysis.
Well, even to
that we
this day,
perform
Jack,
down there,
didn't you
know,
just
it's
have a
something-
conversation with somebody?
Had a conversation with a friend of mine who's class of '80, and he says, you know, it's still talked about among their classmates. And you know, I will say, on the way back, we stopped off at a Pizza Hut for chow somewhere in Southern Virginia, and you know, everybody was a little worried. We were worried that, you know, their superintendent was going to call our superintendent. We didn't know what we were walking back into when we got back to Mother Eye. You know, attempted kidnapping, vandalism, call what you want. We were nervous about what possibly would have happened to us as we got back there. And we finally sat down and we said, all right, you know, let's do a post-strike analysis. Here's the deal. Who would have hit it? There's plenty of ensigns stationed in Charleston who are VMI grads that could have gone in there the week before and had a good time with them. And I remember Gunny coming back and saying, but you know, we tried to kidnap, and we finally came down to it, you know, what are we going to do? We're going to tell everybody, you know, I broke away from 5 guys. I don't think any of his classmates were going to believe that he broke away from 5 guys. So what's his other option? How'd you get away? I cried. Well, I don't think anybody's going to be saying that to their buddies
That's
either.
not a bragging point.
So we managed to get back to the barracks, pretty much feeling that you know, we were in the clear, and that you know, nobody would suspect that we had been up to anything nefarious.
So in the parlance of spec ops, your whole team comes back, no casualties, actually no injuries, and you dabbled in fireworks, physicality,
Yep.
everything that you can think of, reconnaissance, low crawling, no casualties, no
Had a near
injuries.
casualty when we had a spray can go off in my pocket. Other than that, it was pretty benign.
So you're back at the
It's
Institute.
hazardous stuff.
You're back at the
you know, in your
Institute.
defense, I mean, this
And-
is tough stuff to be dealing with.
Gunny, you have something to
Probably
say?
led to the chem-light on the testicle bit later on in your career.
Yeah, about 10 years, 11 years later. Yeah, you're right.
Gunny?
Well, I just wanted to say that at the end of the day, I think going back to the PAO's comment, that being able to bolster the confidence of our fellow classmates, the core, the institute, before the football game was really our primary objective. We needed something to really get our confidence up to win that game, and I think we succeeded when I made the announcement and we all publicly acknowledged what we did.
Well,
I think there was only one member, as I recall, of the team that kind of shirked when I did make the public announcement on the PAO system down in the chow hall saying, "Rats, look up here."
And when did this occur, Gunny? When did this occur?
This occurred on the 16th.
The day after, or the day of SRC, or?
No, I don't think we got back.
No, we didn't get, no, it was at DRC, it was at DRC on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Okay, so the day after you returned to the Institute, you're talking about getting up in the chow hall and making some kind of announcement.
Said, "Rats, look up here," you know. And then I said, you know, I want to announce that the senior class has gone down to the Citadel campus this weekend, and five of the first classmen here. I mentioned the names. That's when Jack Keenan unfortunately started shirking underneath the table because he didn't want to get the attribution from the tax. But I did announce that all 5 of us did participate, did go down there and knowingly attempt to capture and return to the cadets either a bulldog or
And that's really where, you know, I mean, to Tom's credit, he really redeemed himself at that moment. I mean,
I
he
gotta tell
stood
you,
up there and he took it
In front
on
of all
his
the
shoulders.
tax.
Said, because, you know, I mean, once he stood up there and basically, you know, said, "I did this." You know,
Yeah,
nobody else was going to hear the rest of those names. I mean, you know, so there was a lot of risk that he was taking there. And he stood up there when he had to, you know, when he had to get into the breach, he was there.
well, I'll tell you what,
You know, and it's,
when he stood up, grabbed the microphone, I heard the click, and I looked up, and I heard, "Rats, look up here." This weekend, I gotta tell you, my butt slammed shut. I was nervous, because
Like
every
a door on
time,
a vault.
like a door on a vault, wham! Everybody in the chow hall
It wasn't
heard it.
even lowercase. It was
At this
a
point, it
period.
was capitalized, so it was a big.
and keep in mind they don't have coin machines in prison either.
You were saying, Jack?
Every TAC officer was there, and we knew that, you know, the Navy TACs at that time were not the most cadet friendly, and they were all listening to this, and you could see them all pull out their wheel books and start writing down names. And I'm thinking, there goes flight school, there goes graduation, there goes everything, and luckily nothing happened with it.
Right.
I
But, I
will
mean,
tell you, that
but,
was really
but
the
really, I
only
mean,
time.
Gunny was the equivalent of John Hancock writing his, who knows who else signed the Declaration of Independence?
True.
Said, yeah, but they had John Hancock's name on there. Well, we had Gunny, and that, you know, you
And to
knew
me-
that he was going down, and
I
it,
think
you know, and
it's
so
so
I mean,
audacious, the tax, especially the former BMI tax. I mean, they were just astounded by the audacity that we.
That's
showed
exactly
in the
right. That you
operation.
can't
They were
put any
wrong.
other word to it.
They were wrong.
Exactly. Audacious is what, and that's why it succeeded to a degree. Plan C, but again, audacious. You went to a school 3 times our size, on your own, at night, and you perpetrated that mayhem upon the Citadel. I admire you for that. It was a bold, audacious plan, and that's why, again, based on what we know of military principles, audacity overcomes a lot of the inferiority either in planning, time, preparation, rehearsal, etc. You guys did a fantastic job. You've now taken us full circle. Again, let me understand, nothing happened. Nothing, no retribution, no ramifications from that assault. That's a testament, again, to your boldness and audacity. 31 years later, I believe it's safe to say, I'm not an attorney, only a paralegal, but I believe that all of the statutes of limitations have expired, that there's no reason for you 5 to be in hiding anymore as part of Team Pup Snatch. I don't know what else is left for you gentlemen to do.
I've got a couple of, I've been thinking about this here, and you know, some of the implications of the team makeup. What do you make of the fact that there was no Air Force guy in this?
We were looking for combatants.
Yeah, I guess so.
We wanted combat arms.
We knew there'd be no high-level top cover flown on this one. So.
Well, I
Yeah,
also,
well, I guess maybe that's right. It wasn't a techno, you know, you couldn't
The other
foist
thing
it
is
off
we
on a
didn't have
technological fix.
Any
you know,
big
that-
bases with golf courses down there in
that's a
Charleston.
good point
State.
too,
That's
and I
true.
distinctly remember at one time when Forrest Marion came into my room, and we had the issue of Time magazine that was discussing women in the service, and he opened it up and he was looking at it and he says, "Look at this, Jack. The Navy has women helo pilots." helicopter pilots. Can you believe this? I said, yeah, what can't you believe about it? He says, they got women helicopter pilots. I said, you know, Forrest, let's be honest, they fly the same missions that all Air Force pilots do. And he said, really? And I said, of course, you don't think we're letting them go into combat, do you? So I think that kind of sums up, you know, the kind of officer that the Air Force was attracting at that time, and it really wasn't in our benefit to bring somebody that was going to be more of a hindrance.
Well, to bring this to a conclusion, gentlemen, I'd like to get final thoughts from each one of you. And I've always gone to Jack first, so I'm going to start at the opposite end of the panel, and that's with Bruno. Bruno, your final thoughts on Operation Pup Snatch and the 31 years that have elapsed since then.
Final thoughts.
I'm going to throw it out. One of the things in your, now, every one of you were military men for more than, I believe, your initial commitment, right? You were all over 4 years in the military, am I correct?
No, I was only in for 4.
Okay, 4. But the rest of you were in?
All retired.
Okay, so now you've all been to the military, you've done something in the military. How does Operation Pup Snatch and what you accomplished at your age compare to what you've done? As just a thought, you know, in wrap up, in summary.
Well, I can certainly, I can, after all this time, you can analyze it and come up with technical flaws as to what, you know, things that we should have accomplished. It's certainly identified for me in retrospect that, you know, you really got to get eyes out on the target, you know, a lot earlier in the game. So, but overall, so I think it was a, you know, I think it was a pretty good mission. It accomplished, especially with Gunny's, you know, bringing it all home at the end there. You know, I think it accomplished what it was meant to do, which was to raise the morale and drive fear deep into the heart of the enemy. You know, and so I think it was pretty
Thank you, Bruno. Gunny?
Well, I think altogether, you know, you look at the tenets of any kind of planning and military operations, and we accomplished it all. And particularly having multiple plans and being flexible enough to change those plans when required to execute the operation and accomplish things at the end of the day. The thing is, the initiative was in our hands the whole time. When we had a decision to make, we made the decision to release. Wasn't his decision. We could have taken him all the way up if we chose to do that. So, in essence, I mean, from my vantage point, we accomplished what we set out to do. And at the end of the day, I think we went into that football game with our heads up high, and we were successful.
Thank you, Gunny. Dan?
Well, I think after you know, a 22-year career in the Marine Corps, and went to what, 30? It just validated that the planning was done properly for a raid of this type. We kept it a small organization. We planned for contingencies, and then we adapted and overcame as events unfolded. That's all you can expect out of any military operation, really.
Thank you, Dan. Rick?
And not just any military operation. In my civilian life, the planning is always critical. Being flexible in execution is always critical. And so that the lessons learned. Although I must say I'm shocked. I never really thought that on that Tuesday announcement, Jack, that you were cowering. I thought you were demonstrating the low crawl from the field.
Yes, I was.
Rick, thank you very much. Jack, bring us full circle as...
Well, it's still being used today. The whole precepts of Operation Pup Snatch are still being used today in joint operations, and I can say that it was key to my successful military career when, and I realized that in 1987 when I was secretly flown out of my tour in Hawaii to Washington, D.C., where I was heavily interviewed and interrogated by the Gramm-Rudman Commission. And they were using this as a model for future joint operations. That being said, I think the impact of Operation Pup Snatch is still being felt today by our military forces in Afghanistan and Iraq and for future conflicts.
And we all know that, at least at the Citadel, and I agree with Bruno, you 5 struck fear in the hearts of the Citadelians. They knew they were not safe back then. It's almost like the Son Tay prison raid during the Vietnam era. Man, you went into the heart of Hanoi and took it.
They knew that from that moment on, just like they know today, that anywhere at any time we can strike again. And that's what keeps them a little bit afraid.
And not just them. We can hit and strike anybody, anytime, that the 5 of us still desire to.
Now, you guys are all over 50. Are you for hire
Actually, we've been doing a little.
as
thing
a
lately.
team? As a team, are you for hire even at your age right now? Let's say that the Citadel would want to perpetrate something
you know,
on
it's-
Norwich University. Are you
No.
willing to contract yourselves out?
Work
You
only
won't.
for VM.
Okay, only for VMI.
Right.
It's not, however, a coincidence that there's a van out in the driveway here. I just want to point that out. So, you know,
That's
you have
right.
to be prepared.
So for the classes that exist today and for the future classes of VMI, Operation Pup Snatch, the original members, are available for hire.
Well, I just want to say this, that Dan Kahn and I have been talking about this, and I haven't even told you guys about this, really. I mean, this is straight up the top of my head. You know, there is the military academy game on the 30th of October. And I don't know, we could turn off the cameras because we really need to talk about this and plan for this completely. But from what Dan and I are talking about, when I was over in Iraq, I worked with a colonel over there, and his son is now first captain at West Point. I've got the guy's bio, I've got his name, and Tom, I don't know if you want to get your son involved or not, but I think that from my vantage point, guys, I know this is risky at our age and stuff, but I think at this stage, I would like to do one more of these operations. I would like to make it a pup snatch too. And that's
Look,
Actually,
Are
this
you-
would be.
Are you freaking nuts?
No.
Do you know it's 2010? We're talking, now we are talking kidnapping. You know?
No.
No,
We're
no,
proposing Operation Ass Snatch this time.
Well, that's a completely different
Oh,
thing. That
well, there you
I was
go.
thinking the same thing, you know. So to ass snatch just sounds.
It's the
much
Army
more-
Mule. I realize it's been done before.
So,
I've just never been satisfied with the fact that, you know, I think we can pull this off, guys. I think we can do one more. And I think at 52, it doesn't matter what your age is, okay? The fact of the matter is, okay, we've all lived some great lives, okay? I was over, did a lot of things with the military and stuff like that, but I still regret in my heart of hearts that halftime ceremony, we're not turning somebody over to the other side. And I think the West Point game, you know, Dan and I have been talking about this. We talked about this on the way up.
Can we get an ass in that van? I mean, all I'm picturing is that scene in Animal House, you know, when the horse dies and we got to get out the chainsaw. I'm seeing that right now here, Gunny. So
Jack, you're wilting at the outset.
I'm just telling you, we need to be starting to
Well, I
think
think
about.
we have better intelligence this time because our brother Rat Frank Gano was on the staff at West Point.
He's not
We'd
here
be
anymore.
able
He's not there
to
anymore.
but we would be able to pimp him.
You ought to
for
know where all the
the
asses
information
are up
of
at
Hold it,
all
hold it. If you don't mind holding it, I got the documents in my car. This is the guy's name. Here's a photo of him. I got photos and everything else on this guy. His father, see, this is the thing. I mean, you can call it kidnapping, but I think his father, he'll back us up if we need him. You know, that's just a thought.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Okay, let's
I
go
would
back to our
agree.
cadetship.
He's got a
This is the
CID,
first
right?
captain's daddy we're talking about is going to bail our ass out. Okay.
This guy's got a
How
CID.
did John
though,
Rudolph's
so-
daddy do for you when you were on confinement your whole freaking first class year? He helped you out a lot there, didn't he, brother?
Oh, absolutely.
I think it's a go. There you go. I'm sold. Yeah, you got me, buddy. I'm on.
Yeah, he's got a CID. and
We just
football
got to
and
make
all
a
that
call
stuff.
to, you know, let your families know. I said, it's only a couple days before the game.
Can
That's
we-
all. We just
you
need
wanna
like 2 days
Signing
before the
wills
game.
before we go on this thing. Is that
Well,
what
I
you want?
think what we need to be doing then is mentoring cadets to do
I
this
think-
damn thing themselves.
We ought
I was gonna
to.
say, we may want to turn this over to a younger generation.
Yeah, I'm thinking we ought to.
Now,
back
you can
to-
go get an alumnus now. You
We
know?
can provide planning oversight.
We gotta
Who's the
go
first
ahead
captain
and
of
hire
the class
ourselves
of
out as
80?
consultants.
Good God
Actually, he was
Almighty.
in my battalion.
Who prints that small? I can't. My arms aren't long enough to read that.
All right, so we got a new driver.
That was your test. You failed miserably. No, I mean, Dan, are you in still? Or what? I mean, Dan and I have been talking.
I think we.
Absolutely, I'm in, gang.
That's
I'll
right. Have
love it.
another beer, Dan. That's a good plan.
I'm thinking we go in as consultants to a younger generation and let them learn from our experiences.
I'm excited about that idea.
Actually,
I think that's a great idea.
Great idea.
I'm actually a little sorry about the younger generation. I don't think that they're up to taking up the challenge, to tell you the truth.
I don't think that they would do this anymore.
Why? Why wouldn't? They need leadership. They
I
need
think
an
they just
example.
need the,
That's what I'm saying. Even at 52, you can make an
they
impact.
just
on
need
this
the seed
younger
planted.
generation.
I got a lawyer up the street who told me that, you know, if we were to pull this year, or this time in our not in our lives, but at this time in history, we would be.
See,
in jail.
that's the thing about it. You've changed a lot. Because
Yeah,
I
it's really
remember,
risk averse.
I remember
Yeah, I got
old Jack.
I got a TS clearance. That'll do a lot to change you, buddy.
His O's gone back to lowercase.
The
Seriously,
vault door
risk
shutting.
averse there, you know, so.
Ever since that announcement.
I tell you what, if I find a hotel with a vibrating bed, will you go?
There you go.
Am I sharing it with you?
No.
I'll bring my own corn cob.
Bruno.
Two 6-packs of Shiner, 99-cent butane lighter, Lucky Strikes and a fifth of Patron. Ice down that igloo cooler, tank of gas at